All right, so let's take it back there. There we go.
I can't wait.
Hi everyone. So my name is Liz Nelson, and my group and I of Rosie, Dominique, Taylor, and Jacqueline will be talking about resumes. We're going to get into detail about how to make your resume stand out, some helpful hints, and more. So while discussing resumes, I'll be discussing the most common mistakes that people make on a resume. There are more mistakes you can make on a resume than you might expect, and I'll be getting into more about that. It's not going after 20 seconds. Like, it's just not. Do you have it on the automatic? What? We're just gonna keep going. So the first mistake that most people make is listing all of the duties that they perform on the job. So instead of listing one thing, or the courses that, one second. We're like a minute in right now. I'm just gonna keep going, maybe.
No, just pause it. Yeah, just pause it.
I am pausing it, but it's just going. So your resume should have laser sharp focus. If you're struggling to show how a class is relevant to the job that you're applying for, you should just consider removing it altogether. You should use your resume to prove your ability, and talking about career achievements, you should use specific examples. You could also use numbers to demonstrate the value of your accomplishments. That's really effective. If you've improved your performance or surpassed any different targets, then you can use numbers. I don't know how, but some people find a way to talk about their family on their resumes and what their parents have done, what their siblings have done, and how it relates to them. But your resume is all about yourself, so you should just keep it down to your skills and the abilities that you've done. Also, the word transferable skills. People don't like when you use that. It is taken to mean that you're not qualified, but do me the favor and like give me the opportunity. So instead, you should use the word skill or skill set. This is a great example of other things that you can do. And so don't say that you'll work towards the results that you want. It's just assumed. There's no need to use your resume to tell people things that they already know about you. Anyone can say they're a hard worker, but you have to prove that when you get there and get the interview. When you make your resume, you should focus on using direct language instead of formal language. Formal language on resumes is out. Nobody wants to see it anymore. So now people are looking for the direct language, and you should be aware of the different phrases that you're using and how they could be replaced. So on the screen is some bullets. You should try not to bullet your new ideas. Instead, you should use a strong active verb. If you can't find a way to use this, then you can use paragraphs and different ways to role your responsibilities. You should use bullets if you have to for your accomplishments and other things. For social media, don't put your Twitter handle in your resume if it's not appropriate. Some people actually tweet about relevant trends in their industry, so if you're one of them, I would definitely put it on. This goes for your email too. If your email isn't appropriate, then I wouldn't add it. And so to get specific, sometimes people don't tailor their resume for the job, and they just have a generic resume for every application they're applying for. But you should have a solid resume that lists your qualifications and then what the individual employer is looking for. For your template, don't use a cookie cutter template. That means that there's a fine line between approachable formatting and some that are boring in your presentation. For your work history, stay away from templates that don't allow your information to stand out. Don't include photos or personal information. Your resume is a tool for scoring the job or the interview, not anything else. So photos, information like your race, religion, your birth date, it's unprofessional for the interview setting. And also HR managers know that they can get in trouble if they have that on the resume. Do not exceed 1 page. Most resume guidelines will agree that less is more when you're making a resume. If you've been in the professional space for any length of time, you may need that second page to fully showcase your skills and qualifications. But I would definitely try to keep it to 1 page. Don't include your high school name and GPA. The only time your high school and your GPA would be included is if you're a recent grad or if you're still enrolled. Your employer was a young teenager too. They know everything about what goes on in high school and it's not really relevant anymore. Don't use a big font or a large font. A large font on your resume may stand out, but it's not going to stand out in a positive way. When you use a larger font, it takes up valuable space that you could use for other things on your resume, and it could give off a wrong impression. Some people need more than 1 page for a resume, so definitely use all the room you can get. The last common mistake that you should not make is using the word had. Don't use this to start a bolded item on your resume. You'll be better served using an action verb. This is just a colorless verb. And so just to wrap up, those are all the mistakes you should not make on a resume. I know I've made a lot of these common mistakes, but I'm going to pass it on to Rosie. Thank you, everyone.
All right, my name is Rosie Demergen, and I'm going to be talking about ways to make a resume to stand out against competition and candidates applying for the same position and job as you. So applying for a job, any job that you're applying to is going to be stressful, especially if it's your dream job. On top of that, though, for 2019, the market this year is very competitive, especially with all of the recent graduates that are going to be graduating in May. So I'm going to be explaining to you ways that you can make your resume stand out and for employers to really pick it out of the pile. So have your resume respond directly to the job description that you are applying to. You must include skills and experiences that are directly related to that job. Use adjectives that will catch the attention of the person reviewing your application, and adjectives that go along with that specific job that will make you appear more of a qualified candidate. Also, you should have multiple drafts of your resume. You should never use the same resume to apply to a bunch of different jobs. You should have different resumes for different jobs because they might require different skills for each one. And this way it doesn't seem like you just use the same resume to apply to a bunch of jobs in hopes of being selected by a company. Describe accomplishments and not your responsibilities. Every person has responsibilities, no matter what position you're in, whether it's an intern, a full-time person, or even just a student. What matters most is what you did to go above and beyond those responsibilities that made you really stand out. And those are the things that companies and employers are going to be looking for most. In addition to stating your accomplishments, you should, you're going to want to do so in the order of like most important. So you're going to want to list things from most important and most relevant to least important. This way, when the employer scans through your resume, they're going to see that first, especially in the first third of your resume because they scan through it really quickly. It is most important to incorporate words that will catch the attention of the person reviewing your application. So you're going to want to use words like developed, managed, accomplished, and things like that that relate to the job description, but use it so in the natural language of your resume. You don't want to just seem like you're listing these things in the skills section of your resume. In proper professional resume format. So this is really important because you want to have a proper resume format throughout the entire thing. You don't want to use any colors or big fonts or crazy fonts, and have everything aligned properly and continuously throughout so that it's easier for the employer to read through it. Going off that, you should have a proper header, obviously with your name and your contact information so that the employer is able to contact you if necessary, and have it to effectively describe who you are, but only using the specifics, so your name, your address, and your contact information. And in addition to that, you should have a header. If you have a header, you should have your licensing or certifications that might go with it. So if you're applying to a job and you have a PhD or a CPA or an MD, you should list that next to your header because it makes you stand out against other people and shows that you are a qualified candidate for that position. And ignore irrelevant information on your resume. This is really important. Like Liz mentioned, you shouldn't have anything in your resume from high school at this point in your life. It doesn't matter anymore. And it's just as important to know what to leave off your resume as it is to know what to put on it. And it should be just a page in length, so you really don't have much room for irrelevant information. For a personal example, for me, up until like my junior year of college, I worked at a bakery for 3 years in high school, and then I handed in my resume for a class assignment, and my professor just like bluntly told me that that was not gonna be the make or break in getting a job in human resources, obviously, even though I wish it could. Make sure that you are proofreading your resume. Not many do that, surprisingly, but it's probably one of the most important things about building your resume. Make sure you have no typos, no spelling errors. Autocorrect doesn't really catch everything. And this could be the huge deciding factor in whether you are picked from the pile or thrown into the garbage. And on top of that, you should also have someone else proofread your resume. Sometimes we are blinded by our own mistakes, and having someone else read it for you can help your spelling errors. You might not even know that you're spelling a word wrong. So someone else can pick up on that for you instead. And this is super important as well. Most employers will only spend about 6 seconds reviewing your resume, which really means that they just scan right through it. So it is important to have the most important information about yourself on your resume and at the top third of it so that they can see it, and that's the first thing they see, and that they don't just scan through it and see nothing important that relates to the job. In addition to your resume, you should pair it with a good cover letter. This is a huge factor when it comes to getting your resume picked from the pile and then going on to the next step. A lot of people don't include a cover letter, and most of the time it is optional, but I suggest doing it because this will help make you stand up against other candidates who don't do it. And make sure that you aren't lying on your resume. I know that sounds pretty obvious, you shouldn't do that, but some people do that and they say they're more qualified than they really are. But an interviewer is going to be able to catch on to that and see right through you when you're interviewing with them, and you don't want to be put on the spot and seem embarrassed like that. So it's important to just not lie and keep everything professional and to be yourself. And you have to speak the truth. You will find a job opportunity eventually that suits you and is meant for you. And everything that you will work out, and everything for you, and it will work out in the end. And lastly, your story. So your resume is pretty much your story. It's communicating your story, but in a way on paper. It's you reflecting on the things that you've done and what you've accomplished, but it should include specifics on what you have accomplished throughout your career thus far, whether it be through your actual work career or student. Moving on, we'll have Taylor talking about resume formats and length.
Okay, so I'm Taylor, and I'll be talking about, like Rosie said, lengths and carry on about what it should look like and be all professional. So one of the top keys of a good resume in length is that it should be short as possible and still show your worth. You don't want a resume to be too long and an employer to lose interest in it for being, like I said, too long. So your resume should be 1 page for most and 2 for some. As you can see from this picture, it gives 3 different options, but the 3-page is for high-level executives and experienced academics and engineers who want to list their publications or patents Otherwise, you should stick to 1 to 2 pages. So should resumes be 1 page in length? For over 7 years experience, it should be longer. It should be as short as possible and still convey your worth. For most job seekers, this means 1 page. That's true with anyone with less than 7 to 10 years of relevant experience. A worker for American Express has said, I see tons of resumes and many candidates who have 2 or more pages usually have old or irrelevant information. Recent grads, people just entering the workforce or making a career change should really try to stick to 1 page. Resume length matters because let's say you're a sales manager, you work 2 jobs and achieve 7 impressive things, like double revenue in 5 years. You should be able to say all that in 1 single page. So resume length also matters because, like I said, conveys your experience, meaning it lets you explain more in detail your past to give employers more insight of what you have accomplished in previous jobs. How far back the resume should go? Resume should go back longer for jobs that need a lot of experience. They go slightly further than what the job offer says. Focus on customizing your resume to the job offer and prove you're fit for the job, showing related accomplishments. If you do that in 1 single page, definitely do. If a job description says 3 to 5 years experience is required, don't list 20. Some sites suggest that overqualified candidates might have a harder time getting a job. Either way, list only relevant experience. So for the next one, create a career note. This is a section for senior level resume. If you held 1 or 2 positions before the 15-year cutoff, you can provide a short career note. And this mentions the roles and titles you have held in past jobs. So if you have 20 plus years experience or change jobs frequently at the beginning of your career, you may need more than a one-liner to convey your work experience. An alternate is an earlier career history section at the bottom of your professional experience that lists the job title, company name, location of each role. How long should your resume be for a college student? An example I saw when looking this up that I thought was good was like someone talking about like if you solve this really like impressive theorem, you'll need a 2-page resume or longer, but the rest can just be a single page. And then, what should be included in a college student's resume? Focus on education such as a high GPA or an academic award. You can include relevant jobs, including extracurricular activities. You can also include leadership experience and quantify when possible. Ask not how long your resume should also be, but how can you keep it interesting. You don't want to be bogged down with like a long description of responsibilities. Managers skim through your resume in 6 seconds. So you want to be brief and like stick to achievements so they don't lose interest in anything. You build your resume with achievements that prove you're basically already nailed the job. Doing that will keep your resume short and engaging. Like I said in the previous slide, employers skim through your resumes in 6 seconds, so shorter the better to keep them engaged. So something to avoid when creating your resume is listing the things that you are responsible for. Not only will this make your resume too long, but it's also boring. And like I said before, you want to keep it short, you want to keep it 1 page, and they go through your resume within 6 seconds. So shorter, the better. Can repeat that all this. You don't want to repeat the same achievement over and over again. Rather than saying you trained 5 employees in 1 technique, you can say you trained 5 employees in one, like you trained 20 plus employees in lists of different techniques, rather than having a bullet point list and making it long when it doesn't have to be. You can also make resume fonts smaller, fiddle with line spacing, and tweak margins, but you don't want to torture your resume and make it look like a black sheet of paper. Some extra resume length is okay, but you don't want to threat a manager not hiring you for making your resume look sloppy.
Making it look what?
Making it look sloppy.
I thought you said soggy.
Wait.
Sorry.
You're messing me up. Okay, wait, I'm gonna go back to this one. So, it's gonna mess the whole thing up.
Just keep it there.
Okay, in addition to removing details from the first role you held, there's other information you can take off your resume to turn it into one page. There's also no need to list a street address at the top of your resume. If you're searching for a position in your current location and want employers to know your local candidate, you can just list that. So in conclusion, there's no set in stone how long your resume should be, but it really should keep to one page. Many job seekers think adding more words and experience make them look like a better candidate, but that's wrong. Keep your resume simple, relevant, and professional. Many of you will realize trimming it down will make it easy. And thank you for listening to me about resume length. Here's Dominique to talk about helpful hints.
Okay, bear with me. I lost my voice this weekend. So my name is Dominique. I'm going to be talking to you about some helpful hints for your resumes that's hopefully going to get you into that grad program you want to get into or the job you want to get hired for, such as things that should be added to your resume, taken off, more important things that are going to stand out above other things that you might want to get rid of, some really good resources to use that you guys might not be aware of that even Rowan University has. So for example, you want to prioritize your resume as in your points. You want to make sure that your resume is going to be based on the certain thing that you're applying for. So if you're applying to grad school, you want to put more emphasis on your education, your coursework, maybe stuff like that. If you're applying to a job, you want to make sure that you're doing anything on there, such as like your professional experience, your internships. You want to stick away from your coursework because most likely, if you get picked for that job, you're going to have to send them a transcript anyway. They're going to see that. You want to make sure that you're not putting on anything from high school. Like they said before, they don't care that you played football for a year in high school or were in a play or sang in the choir. That usually is not going to say much about how you're going to add to that career or that workforce or anything like that. If there's no room, since you only really need to use one page, you need to take things off, such as your skills, even some achievements. If you have a whole paragraph about volunteer work, that's great, but there's usually going to be a spot on the application for the job that you're applying for that you can list and talk about yourself with that stuff. Another thing I never really knew until kind of recently is that at the bottom, some people write their references that they want to give the employer. You can write, this is going to save you room and refrain from using unnecessary information. You can write references upon request because sometimes they might not even ask you for your references. Depending on the job, you might have to do professional references such as a supervisor or boss, or they might not want those. They might want personal ones. They might not want family members, stuff like that. It depends on the type of job or what you're applying for. And then also if you have a lot, you want to pick like 3 good ones to use, and that's going to be depending on the type of job you're getting. So, for example, personally, I use the same 3 resumes usually, but I applied to a job in my hometown recently, and my stepdad's cousin is the mayor of our town, so I used him as a reference compared to something else because that just showed it was like more important, I feel like. A lot of things some things that people don't know is resources that you can use. First of all, if you're having trouble, you could literally reach out to any of your professors, especially your HR teachers. They probably know what they're talking about. They probably maybe even have done interviews and looked at so many resumes. You want to use a lot of sources that you trust. Some websites, if you just Google how to make a resume, are not going to give you the right information at all. You want to refrain from going onto things, even websites that don't have edu or .org, they're not going to help you. Wikipedia, don't use. And then also you could use like resources from Rowan, like ProfLink and ProfJobs. They have a lot of good stuff. And then there's also, I don't know if you guys have heard of it or anything, but the Center for Career Advancement. I've had a friend that worked in there. they take students' resumes and edit them and give them back to you and stuff. And that's literally a resource you can use right here at Rowan. You want to be professional as possible. I know that this was said before, but your wording and your grammar really matters because this is the first thing that someone sees when you're applying for something. You might be a great person, super outgoing, but if you are writing on your resume and with bad grammar and misspelling, all that type of stuff, they're not good. They're just going to throw away your resume. And then also write on your resume how you would be sitting in the interview talking to that person. Don't use crazy words that you don't even know what they mean. Then you're going to walk in there and they're going to be like, this is not the same person that I read about their resume. There's another thing too called buzzwords. You can Google them. I just learned this too. And they go per topic or like what job you're applying for. Also, another thing that's really important, I just learned as well, obviously I just redid my resume. Use a personal email for contact information. Don't use the one Rowan provided for you. It just shows that you've done more than what Rowan has just given you and you're not really, and you have another thing that they can contact you for. Don't use an email from like 5th grade. That's super weird. And then you always use your cell phone number, write your full name, no nicknames in the top part where you're writing your contact information. You want to make sure your cell phone's on there because everybody has their cell phone. That's probably who they're going to call. And so for personal details, save all of that for your letters of interest, cover letters, and for stuff in the resume or in the interview. Because most likely, as soon as you get into that interview, they're going to start off with saying, "So tell me about yourself," and that's going to give you the chance to tell them where you're from, your siblings, all that type of stuff. You can put all your strengths and how you're qualified and what you've learned and gained from college in the cover letter and the interest or the letter of interest instead of your resume. It's going to save you room. It's going to knock off some unnecessary information that shouldn't be on there. I know that everybody wants to show people how great they are, all your strengths and all that stuff, but your resume is not the spot to do it. You want to be very straightforward that you've had this internship, you've done this job, you went to this school, and that's it. You don't want to write how you're so good at communicating with people and talking to people in jobs and having good customer service. You can see that for the interview. You want to make sure that the quality of your resume is always excellent. And then there's a lot of simple things that you guys can do to make your resume stand out from other people instead of just having them throw it away. So next I'm going to give it to Jacqueline. She's good.
I'm Jacqueline. I'm just going to wrap up just a little bit about everything they said and why resumes are important and how employers view resumes as well. So it's important because this is the first thing that an employer will see from you. So, before you even get the chance to sit in that interview seat, your employer's going to look at that resume that you made and tell who you are as a person. And right then they're going to decide whether they want you working in their company or not just by a few words. You want to make sure that your resume is the best it can be when you hand it into any applicant or any job. That way, you definitely have a good chance versus other people because you're not going to be the only one applying for this position. There's probably going to be at least 20 other people applying for the same position as you. So you want to make sure that your resume is good just to get into that interview seat. So it's definitely your first impression from any employer. It's often it's often referred to as one of the most crucial steps during a job research. So many people don't think their resume is one of the most important things. But as I said before, like any employer, the first thing they're going to look at for you is going to be your resume. So they're going to decide whether they even want to give you an interview based off of what is on your resume. So the purpose of it is kind of just to give yourself a quick summary of your skills, your abilities, your accomplishments. It's kind of an advertisement of what you've accomplished so far in your jobs and school and everything you've done so far. You want to kind of emphasize what you've done and not school and things like that. You don't want to go into too much details. You just want to say like why you're qualified for the job, what your skills are. So it's the hiring managers decide. It helps the hiring manager decide that you have the necessary skills and experience. So a well-written one will help the employer pick you out of the other 5 applicants or not. So these employers use your resumes to weed out people who aren't right for the job. So if you're applying for a job at a school, you want to write skills and things that are going to show that you would be good in that position, and you're not going to want to tailor it to something else. That's a mistake a lot of people do make. So it's important to keep your resume updated at all times. So every month you want to go in and keep your resume updated, because you never know when an opportunity is going to come up, and you want to be ready for that. So just for like even a promotion in your job that you have at that time, you want to make sure your resume stays updated so that you're always ready to just send it out just with a few tweaks. Some very, very important parts of a resume are, one, definitely your contact information. You want to make sure at all times that any information for your contact you have on there, you're answering. So like your email, your cell phone, you would make sure it's the right information. A summary of you and skills that qualify you, your professional and academic experience as well. So one thing that a business really looks for when looking at a resume is keywords. So as they've said multiple times, employers usually skim through resumes at first. You want to have words that they see that definitely match their job descriptions, because if not, they just throw your resume away and move on to the next one where they do see these keywords that other people are using. And as you write your resume, you want to be really careful not to make yourself seem more than you're not. I read a fact, according to Career Builder study of about 2,000 hiring managers, 57% of respondents said the most common lie they catch on a resume is an embellished skill set. So you don't want to lie and say that you're really good at something, you can do this, you can do that, and then when you get into your interview, you have no idea what you're talking about, you can't even explain it, or you have nothing to say about it. And you definitely want your resume to outline your key responsibilities and things you've accomplished in each position. They want to see how you've contributed to your overall career success. They don't really care too much about like just stories and things that don't matter. And definitely if you keep your social media, they're going to look anyway, but if you keep it like employers can look at it, you can include your links on your resume at the top. Like they were saying before, like LinkedIn is definitely one you definitely want to put on there. But even Twitter, if you use it to talk about jobs and things in your industry, you can include that too. Any average recruiter analyzes a resume in between 5 to 7 seconds. So right away, if you have an unprofessional email, they throw it right away. Even they said that 76% of resumes are thrown away just because of their emails. Adding a picture to your resume does not give you a better chance to get the job. About 88%, it's an 88% chance of getting your resume thrown out if you include a picture. The only time you need a picture on your resume is if you're applying to be like a model or something that has to do with pictures, or an art school where you need a portfolio. Other than that, you don't want any pictures. I know personally, to get my job, I had a few people look over my resume because there was just mistakes just everywhere. When you're first writing a resume, you're not really sure like what to include, what not to include. But for me, like I was putting my high school stuff on there, which I'm about to get my bachelor's in May. So my teacher told me to take that off and just include my bachelor's degree instead, and it coming up, because they're not going to care about my high school so much as what I'm doing right now. And then just overall, just like I said, have someone looking over your resume, whether it's a teacher, a coworker, or even a friend, someone who knows what they're talking about, what they're doing, because you want to have as many people like look at it and give you advice on fixing it, especially people in that industry, because they're going to know what the employer is going to be looking for you. And as Liz stated, all the common mistakes and things are good to know, because a lot of us make the same common mistakes on these resumes. So knowing what not to put on there, the mistakes other people make, that helps you keep that from yours. And then as Rosie was talking about, making your resume stand out, it's really important, because there's going to be multiple people applying for the same position. So making yours stand out compared to other people, that's what's going to get you into that seat for that interview. And that's what's going to give you a chance to really stand out and get the job that you wanted. And then Taylor's talking about format. That's also very important, because if you give someone a 5-page resume, they're most likely not even going to read it. They're not going to want to. It's going to be too much. They have like so many other to look at. So they definitely don't want to see 5 pages worth of you going on and on about what you did in high school or what you did here and every single thing you've ever done. They just want to see the most important things that are tailored to their jobs. And then Dom did give us some really good topics and hints on what to put in your resume to make it better. There's things that I didn't even know about that she was saying, like don't use your school email address. Like that's a big one. I mean, it's obvious not to do stuff like that, like your older ones, but even your school ones, you know, you wouldn't think it would be a big deal, but people do want to see something different. And overall, they're just resumes are just the most important part when you apply for a job because that's what is going to get you into that interview seat. So you want to make sure that your first impression is really good and that you really are getting that point out there that you want, what you're qualified for, what you've accomplished, and your skills. That way you can get the job that you wanted.
Thank you.